Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the FMCG Guys, where week in, week out, twice a week, we speak with some of the most notorious, best, and fun leaders in the consumer goods and retail industry. My name is Daniel Torres, and I actually ended up in the industry via headhunting. I know, not the most common route, but here we are. But fortunately enough, though, I'm accompanied by two amazing co-hosts who do have an amazing track record in consumer goods and bring that extra knowledge and probably credibility as well to the show. So on one hand, we have Efrain Rosario, who is not here today, but I have some good news because on the other hand, we have the great Christine Nicolau, another top FMCG executive, and I would dare to say now a top industry voice. And she's here with me today, well, virtually. How are you, Christina?
Hi, Daniel. I'm doing well and blushing very much with all of the kind words that you just said about me.
I have to give you some good energy before we start the recording.
We need good energy, yes. And I'm actually filled with good energy today as we're going back to how I ended up in the FMCG industry, which was actually supply chain, my first role a long time ago.
I know. Maybe we'll have to do a podcast one day interviewing you about like your experience in supply chain, no? Maybe we should like do a bit more self-promotion sometimes.
Maybe I will have few things to say only, but still perhaps good conversation. But here we have more experts with us with a lot more interesting things to say, no?
That's very humble of you. By the way, speaking of self-promotion, I'm very excited to announce that we're back with another live event, again in Amsterdam, Candid Commerce, November 5th. Exciting times, no?
Very exciting times, and we have set the bar very high, or I have to say the people who joined us last time did, with the very candid and open conversations that we had. So I'm very much looking forward to see what we'll get this time.
Yeah, I can already announce, I hope that when this goes out, we already have a link in the show notes, so please check it out. But I can already announce we'll have a president from Barilla, we'll have a chief customer officer from Nexi, an optical company. We will have a head of retail media from bol.com, someone from Coca-Cola as well. So pretty exciting.
Very exciting.
But not more or maybe as exciting as today's guest that we have today, somebody that I've wanted to have on the show for a while, but he's normally pretty busy because he's the COO of the quality group, no other than Selim Tansug. Hey, Selim, how are you?
Hey. Great, fantastic, and super happy to be here with you both.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. It's been a long time coming, but I think, and we'll talk about it now, you've had a last busy 2 years or 3 years or maybe 10 years.
Well, when you're in supply chain, I guess every single year is busy, but it just basically changes. And what I feel is the rhythm and the speed that is required has actually been going up. So yeah, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, I think supply chain has always been very intense because it's something that can never stop. But you do have a point here that I believe that with COVID and all the subsequent instability that we've had, I think it's become like probably a few percentage points more complex, no?
Yes, indeed. And I think, I more or less started supply chain 20 years ago. There were different eras, right? There was an era of globalization, and everyone was trying to consolidate their supply chains and try to optimize it, which is still obviously very valid today. But then as the world started to see more and more disruptions, as you said it, politically, economically, obviously with the global warming, we see some of the environmental impacts also coming our way as well. But long story short, then people and companies started to realize that we need more resilience, more agility in our supply chains, which then started to unwind some of the things that has been done in the past. Obviously, that's not easy to do overnight. And therefore, if I look at the past 5 years, there has been a tremendous work happening in the supply chain. And that is obviously now coupled with the digitalization that has been there, but is also accelerating massively. And right now, I mean, the installation of AI and all the new technologies, it's still an amazing place to be in for like supply chain, because you can now truly add value to the company.
No, that's true. And I think that we've talked about like that thing of supply chain becoming an accelerator and a key function for a while. But I think now it's more explicit than it has ever been, I think. Looking into your profile, Selim, you started your career in supply chain with Unilever, and you were there for, I think, 17 years or so. But how did you end up working, and why did you end up working in supply chain in FMCG in the first place?
Well, it's a great question. I still question that every single day. No, joke aside. It's a funny story as well. I mean, I'm an industrial engineer by background. I always loved optimizing things. And obviously that's the core of your industrial engineering study. And how can you get more out of the resources that you already have? And as a person, that has always excited me. But funny enough, my first job interview was for actually a marketing position in Unilever. Good or bad, I don't know, hard to tell. But it went well in a sense that they actually suggested me to a supply chain position given my background. And here I am after, let's say, 18 years in Unilever. So there's a bit of a funny twist in that story. But in core, it's like... I really like the fact that you can come in and take the baton from the previous leaders and then always leave it in a position that is better than how you found it. That's in the nature of supply chain. And then you have a tangible thing that you deliver. If I look at my career, I mean, I built some factories and then they still stand still. If I look back and say, okay, this is what we've done, or major transformations, or if it was like even like running the customer service function, I can say that, hey, this is how we've improved the overall experience that we run. And therefore, I think that's the fulfillment element of working in supply chain is great. And that's what kept me still loving the job.
Yeah, and I guess a big FMCGs love engineers overall in the recruitment process for supply chain specifically. And they have a huge learning curve once you go in, like they give you all the frameworks, you have amazing leaders, you learn a lot. But it wasn't only Unilever that you got to learn a lot from and get the experiences, right? You also got to move around in the world quite a bit. I see that you moved to Vietnam and Rotterdam. What were the kind of things that you got to learn kind of in a different way with these moves?
I think that's one of the beauties of working in a global multinational company, that you can actually keep on learning and move around the geography. Obviously, I mean, on a personal front, that gives you a much more resilience. It's a growth opportunity. Almost starting from scratch, starting with your family, establishing a new house. Sometimes you take it for granted, but a lot of the basics that you need to factor in. I was always making a joke, right? I mean, when we first moved to Vietnam, it's like, I didn't know what kind of milk to buy. Like, it sounds so simple, but it's one of the challenges that you're in this new country. Obviously, I mean, all these expat markets are there, but nevertheless. But from a job point of view, obviously, it gives you the ability to learn, because obviously every single country has its own dynamics and cultures, but at the same time then also give as well, because the reason that you're actually sent to that market is you're expected to also, based on your past experience, go there and deliver. So I always find this like a two-way street. And then I personally learned a lot. It was an amazing culture, what the team has built there down in Vietnam, and equally so. Then I came to Europe and then trying to understand and work in the European context, which is at the time was Unilever's one of the biggest clusters, but obviously too complicated. All the kind of the different countries and category dynamics. So every single job kept me adding new muscles that I didn't know that existed in my body.
And we forgot to mention, by the way, that you're originally from Turkey. So you went Turkey, Vietnam, headquarter in Rotterdam. Any recommendation you would give to people out there that are listening about, like, because you also have a family, of how to like make these moves?
Well, look, all these moves are very personal. Right. And then obviously, I have had a lot of great mentors that have advised me, but eventually it boils down to you need to choose what matters to you. In the end, I'm a firm believer of an holistic view. Obviously, you need to balance everything. And in different times of your life, you might have different priorities. So there is no right of sometimes prioritizing work or sometimes prioritizing family over that instance. I still have old connections that reach out to me and ask for advice. Yesterday, actually, I was just talking to another colleague of mine from Unilever. She actually told me that she decided to stay in the job because currently with the remote working ability, it helped her run the business and the family side with 2 young kids. And I said, that's perfectly fine because in the end, you still have plenty of time in your career. For me, I was lucky. My wife was really supportive. When I actually got the first Vietnam assignment, she was 6 months pregnant to our second one. It wasn't an easy, and our oldest one at the time was younger than 2 years old. And for the first 3 months, I actually commuted between Vietnam and Turkey, which is a 13 hours flight.
Wow,
exactly,
yeah.
right? So it was tiring for me. And I then said, okay, hey, I'm young. It's a great career opportunity. I need to take it. I got the blessings from my family. Was it easy? No. Did it impact my career? Slightly. But hey, that's the kind of like you look at what the cards that you're dealt with, and then you try to play the best hand that you can do.
Yeah, exactly. Based on the priorities, as you said, like your colleague, right? At any given point, you have different things that have different weights on how you're going to make those decisions. And today we're speaking and you're in Hamburg, but you're actually based in London, right? So you made another change and you also decided to leave Unilever for a smaller business. So how did you go about making that decision?
Well, definitely not easy. Unilever is an amazing school. And obviously, I learned a lot and still up to date. A lot of my skill sets that I currently deploy in my current job are based on the fact that on the job or on top of the leadership trainings that I got in Unilever. It felt like my career was becoming to a point where it wasn't moving upwards for various reasons. And then I was kind of looking for some change personally. And at the same time, Unilever was also making some changes. And the out of those changes, the jobs that were available for me were not that interesting. And I then had an amazing opportunity to join the quality group, which is what I'm doing for the past 3 years. So I would say for me, the stars were kind of aligned in a sense that I was looking for something out. There was a change happening in Unilever, and at the same time, something just came knocking on my door. And I always say, in your career progression, at least 51% is always chance, right? But simply, I was lucky. And then I started the interview process. The job sounded more interesting with every single stakeholder that I met. And then I decided to join and make a bit of a leap of faith. But then looking back the past 3 years, it's been wonderful. And it's not easy, right? Your first move, especially being a 18-year Unilever veteran, the first change is always the hardest. At least during the time, those were the people that told me who's done the similar changes. Obviously, I consulted a lot. And then, eventually made the decision.
Yeah, and also moving to, you're moving company and you're also moving to a very different type of company in size, in ownership, but also in the category, which is defined as sports performance nutrition. What does that mean exactly? What type of products do you have?
Well, we have overall, let's say, 2 brands, and they have similar but some different target consumer groups that they offer to. Overall, obviously, our biggest product line is still protein, and all the powders associated with that. Within our ESN brand, which is slightly more focused to gym goers and athletic lifestyle people, we do have a lot of products that is associated with that, as in pre-workout, post-workout, and like if you're a runner, we're introducing electrolytes and so on, and etc. And then we have our amazing protein bars. If you've not ever tasted them, I should definitely urge you to. They're fantastic, and obviously it's currently a bit of a challenge for me in supply chain because the demand is skyrocketing and I can't keep up with the capacity. But anyway, side note. And then on the other side, we have the More Nutrition, which is a bit of a more of a lifestyle brand. And then obviously it still has the core, as in the proteins and etc. But on top, we have a lot of these various products that is less in sugar, less in calorie, but still fulfilling the taste, so that you can actually focus on your calorie intake without sacrificing the taste of your product. So overall, it's an amazing category to be in. And my takeout is post-COVID. I think people are becoming more health conscious. Longevity is a big trend that is picking up. If I also see the young consumers, they're looking into much more healthy eating habits. And then overall, lately, if you look at what's happening in the world with all these weight loss medication, people are much more into consuming protein. And that's where our products, along with the supplements that we offer, like all the vitamins that is necessary for you to function, is becoming super handy.
I have two Gen Z sisters. They are both on different supplements, and indeed both of them take protein. But it feels like it's also a completely different route to market versus what you would have with the Unilevers of the world, right? So you're not mass supermarket, hypermarkets. What does the route to market look like? Like my sisters get it only online. That's so much that I know.
The category itself is a perfect fit for an e-com business because people usually buy a few items and then your average order value or basket value is fulfilling enough for you to run a healthy e-com business. When I started, the company was around 90%, if I may say, plus or minus, e-com driven. And we run our own web shops and our own distribution. So as you said, it's completely different to what I used to do in Unilever, despite the fact that Unilever also in the past 5 years tried to increase the e-com share and has been doing it. This is completely different. And right now, we are trying to build the opposite of what Unilever has done. And then we want to now increase our healthy share in the B2B business. And we're moving towards a more of an omni-channel strategy. And therefore, because in the end, there are different consumers, right? So your Gen Z sisters definitely much more online, but there are still consumers that shop in the brick and mortar. The share of your supermarket chains and all the drug channels and etc. is still big, and then we don't want to be underrepresented there. So that has been one of the things that we as a company and also me in supply chain has built. Is like, how do we then shift the company from a D2C to B2B, also kind of an omni-channel strategy, and it's going pretty well.
Interesting. I wonder what's more difficult, to go from B2B to B2C or from B2C to B2B. I guess they both have their complexities, no?
Well, I mean, for me, from a supply chain point of view, going in the reverse order is easy because obviously, I mean, working with Unilever, I have built that muscle of how to run a go-to-market operations for, let's say, your traditional trades. And then if I may say, both are hard, but overall, if you have the right products, then you can actually get your listings in the B2B side. But what our company has built with all the, let's say, community that we have with the influencers and the kind of the sales model that is out there, I think that's really a unique model. And overall, I believe that's the harder one to replicate. And that's where our core strength comes in. And then obviously, as I keep on mentioning, now we need to continue to play it omni-channel, so that we, if you're launching a new flavor on our D2C web shop, we want to have a strategy that we make sure that this is also translating into our other channels. whether at the same time or a segmented approach. It has all the different strategies behind it. But we're also now trying to put all these plans together and make sure that we deploy them as a one holistic strategy.
I'm trying to think how hard it must have been with demand planning when you have something that's influencer based, for example. Like you are not planning for a pipeline to fill a shelf. So I guess like the whole risk stays with you. And how did you go about it, Selim, going from Unilever to this kind of model? What was there something that struck you and you were like, okay, here I'm learning something completely new right now?
Okay, that's like a 1 hour question on its own, right? I mean, first and foremost, if you look at our company, on average, I would say on a weekly basis, we are introducing around 4 to 5 new products, right?
That's speed to market.
That is, and overall, I mean, we have an amazing product development team. They're always out there catching the new trends, new flavors, and obviously with this in-house experience, they're able to develop the recipes and then hand it over to us in operations, and that happens quite fast. And then when that is handed over to us, we are required to more or less bring that product to shelf or make it available for our consumers in 12 weeks, right? I come from a world where innovations took 18 months, and that was kind of like a big innovation once in a category. So that was a big shock for me. And I think my essence of coming in was always, how do we keep, and I refer it as the magic of this company, running, but at the same time building some systems around it? Because the worst we could have done, which some of the companies have done it, is to try to build systems and processes that actually then kills that speed, the agility, or the hype kind of business that we're running around. And then I might be, let's say, be very happy because now I have professionalized the entire thing, but then I actually crippled the company. So that was one of my biggest ongoing, reminders constantly to myself, is that, hey, I want to keep the core of the business, the strength of it running. But at the same time, obviously, it was very manual. There were a lot of chaoses, a lot of issues. How do we make sure that we put the right systems and guardrails and automations around it so that we make it much more fluent, but keep the same dynamism? That's I think point number one. Point number two, when it comes to demand planning, we're still learning because it's unbelievable. And then our ability to estimate what a single new flavor will sell is still, we've improved. We're looking into past sales. We're getting now early scores from the influencers who had an early access to the product and say that, well, this is fantastic or this is okay. And then therefore we kind of estimate how the sales will happen. But you're right. That's still the $1 million question. And that's the hardest thing of planning in such an environment where the company has this every single week a different, what we call an action, which is like a new promo structure. And most probably a new product comes in. And then sometimes, most of the time, we run out of stock.
And you talk about demand planning and in general managing complexity. Do you think that like AI can have like a practical use there in making that easier?
Well, high level response, 100%, right? Obviously, currently, we are still running a very manual planning process. We made conscious choices in the past that we had a lot of different IT deployments in the company, and we needed some of the other basics, as in an ERP system, which will stabilize some of the other data that you would need to build a planning software on top. And right now, we are in evaluation of moving into an automated end-to-end planning software. in which obviously the technology is evolving and all these AI, machine learning or agent AI tools are out there. So we want to kind of skip the bit in between and move from an Excel company to almost like an AI-driven planning on certain aspects of it. So let's see. Obviously, it's ambitious, but hey, that's what we like. So over the course of the next 12 months, I have a very ambitious plan on significantly automating our planning process.
Your plan sounds very ambitious indeed. But I have to say, it feels like a lot of what you're doing is not so much only on the technical side, but a lot of change management, like hearing how the organization was built up. So how do you work with kind of like the leadership aspect of it all? How do you manage to engage the stakeholders to take them on that journey?
Well, I mean, one thing that I really like about our company is we're still keeping this entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, maybe for a background, I don't know if everyone knows, but this company has been acquired by a private equity fund. And previously it was founder-led, and the founders have done an outstanding job in building these two amazing brands. And then we still have this hybrid, let's say, executive team where some of the colleagues are coming in from the original founding team. And then lately there have been people like myself added into the equation. So we're still keeping I would say checks and balances in place that sometimes I'm saying, hey, I mean, this is too fast, or sometimes the other party is saying, hey, this is too slow. And then I feel that we are complementing on each other's strengths and building this even up to a bigger thing. Overall, I mean, we constantly have to prioritize, and that's always a thing. Like, I mean, our CTO, he always have too many things that he needs to do. And then we look at it, okay, first things first, what is the things that add value to our consumers and our community, right? Because if I have a bad consumer experience, if you keep on ordering and I cannot deliver your orders, that's really hurting the business, right? So that comes always a priority. Anything that touches the product, the consumer, our community is first. Then obviously we need to build the basics and the foundations. And then afterwards, we then look at how do we improve and make efficiency gains. So that's kind of like how we set the different priorities, and then we work towards that. Within my team, it's been a constant change management. I think, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we went public that the company has actually gone 5x in less than 4 years, right? So, I mean, that's for a supply chain operations, quintupling your business in 4 years is outstanding. So I must say kudos to my team who've actually managed this. This means that we constantly added new warehouses. This means that we constantly added new production lines and we built new capabilities. Our procurement team is out there reaching out to alternative suppliers constantly. Our quality team has been like, because I mean, the company name is the Quality Group, and then we want to live by that. It's one of our core values as well. We've implemented new systems, new softwares, new testing protocols, and so on. So it's like a 360. Every single pillar has its own deliverables that makes us work towards the end game.
Yeah, I mean, you just can think of like all the different layers there are of complexity when you mentioned managing a supply chain, but then when you have all these moving pieces and the business growing like times 5, well, it's quite a lot. How many people are you managing now? More or less?
More or less, if you include the blue colors, I would say 600 to 800 people. That is in the operations. We're still trying to keep it at as lean as possible. But obviously, I mean, our automation levels in certain areas are still not what you would expect in a, let's say, Unilever or a P&G factory and etc. But lately, for example, I mean, if you look at our logistics, we've been, I'd say, an era of mushrooming because there was so much demand that it kind of opened up one warehouse after the other. And then at one point, we decided to say, okay, but what is the mid to long-term strategy? And therefore, we invested into now a 50,000 square meters, a single big site, where we then said, okay, how do we build it for future as in automation? And then we're partnering with different robotics and automated conveyors and etc. there. which will then, we're in the midst of ramping that site up as we speak. And that will also now, let's say, enable further growth without adding incremental headcount to the operations, because that's also not sustainable going forward.
Yeah, even if we all like the vanity number of having a lot of people, but but obviously, like when you have 800 people, there's a lot of people that are looking up to you, and like your actions mean to them, no? And obviously, you've been managing people for probably since your early years. Do you think you were born a people leader, or did you have to develop into one?
It's a good question. I'm a people person. I genuinely believe my success solely relies with my team and their teams, right? In essence, the higher you go in the organization, your daily impact is getting less. And I want to spend most of time into coaching and guiding the people in towards the right direction, or helping them if they have a bit of an issue to solve, and etc. And then the rest of my time, I want to focus on looking into the future. Lately, and obviously, it's been a challenge, to be honest, right? In a company that's been growing that rapidly without the let's say, the infrastructures that you require. It's been heavily eating up my time to focus on the short term. And personally, let's say if you're a CEO, that's not the right thing to do. And then I've changed my thinking into this one. 6 months ago, I launched a new strategy. I say our job in supply chain would be perform and transform. And then obviously, depending on the level in the organization, the share of a percentage that you need to allocate between those two should change. For example, obviously, I am required to deliver the short-term performance of the company. It's fair enough. But I would say that's more of my team's job. And then I would say less than 50, if not ideally less than 30% of my job would be on the perform side of it. And I should be allocating at least a big amount of my thinking into the transformation side. How do I cope up with the growth? If the company is becoming more international, what's the right route to market strategy? What are the right systems and tools and the processes to build around that, and etc. And then my team should be maybe 50-50, and then going down, let's say, if you're a, let's say, warehouse manager, obviously then you're required to do 90% perform, because your job is to get the orders out today. And then plus you need to contribute, because you know your job the best, the 10%, let us feed with information that how you can make your job better with the 10% transformation piece.
Do you think that people change like as years go by on their approach? You've been around for a minute, right? So you have managed teams at different stages, different generations. Do you see that this part is evolving as people change?
I mean, what I see is there are generational impacts. I think Daniela was briefly talking about this, right? So, I mean, I see myself as like one of the last generations that still learn their way the hard way. I mean, I started with no cell phones, and then had the cell phones introduced, and like we were kind of like the last generation that was between the non-digital and the digital era. So I spent my childhood playing soccer with a Coca-Cola can, but then at the same time, I had my Nintendo Game Boy as well, right? So, but if I look at my kids right now, or if I look at the young new graduates that is coming up, first of all, I think they're definitely more advanced in technology than we are. And that's a key. And then obviously, that is their strength, that they can actually push us to deploy more technology usage and then the traditional way of working. But at the same time, I think they are, how should I say, they don't want to spend too much time on the job, and they have like they want to move from one thing to the other quite fast. And sometimes, like if you're a demand planner, for example, especially if you're running a seasonal category, you need to spend 1 or 2 years to understand the category dynamics, to go and work with the Excel and understand and digest your numbers, right? If you just outsource that to an AI, and to a certain extent it will, but like how do you learn the cores of the job, right? If I currently get the support from an AI, but the AI output is not good enough, I still have my past 20 years of experience where I can filter, judge, and etc. So I'm still trying to see that how is it going to happen if you don't have any experience and then you use all these AI tools. What's going to happen, right? So it's very interesting. I don't know the answer. I don't know what's right or wrong. But with the new generation, my own recommendation would be to, yes, go heavy on technology, but at the same time, make sure that you spend quality of time to actually learn the job dynamics itself.
Yeah, and this is a huge whole change of paradigm to a point. I think for everybody, but these new generations are like embody this change, no? But like the workers that we are today are not the ones that we were when we started. For a number, also because we have experience, but like the take around, it's just very different. Like even like, I don't know, when I put somebody in my database, I had to do it all manually before, and now I just press a button and just scrapes a LinkedIn profile and you have all the information there, right? For example. But for example, I still take all my call notes manually. I don't want AI to do that because nobody does it like me, right? But obviously, companies can't be stubborn and say, we've always done things like that. We need to
what got you here will not get you there, right?
Must learn how
you need to embrace that.
Years ago. Even if
keep
they
constantly challenging ourselves.
Companies will
what
need
I
to
really
adapt.
like with our CEO constantly giving is like,
personally implemented.
How can we do our job better? Because the moment you say you're perfect, then you start becoming really stagnant. Right? There's always room for improvement. So that mindset is super crucial, to be really self-critical in a sense that you need to improve. And what we're trying to do is like really push certain initiatives top down, but at the same time, give the team to freedom and hopefully some time to create some initiatives bottom up as well. For example, and obviously, AI is like everyone is talking about AI, right? So we now, as a company, identified or looking to identify what are the company-wide top 5 AI use cases that we should deploy. Within that, in operations, which most companies do, is customer service. Obviously, being a D2C company, we get a lot of daily tickets because we deal with our end consumers. They have all these different questions, but some of them are just simple answers, right? And then the more you get your systems integrated, the more can AI handle it. And long story short, this is a top-down initiative that now we are pushing down the organization. But at the same time, I have different functions coming to me and say that, okay, simple things like quality label checks. Recently, we had let's say, misprint, and then we're now trying to install a small camera on our lines, which actually reads with an AI background and then just checks, hey, is the spelling correct, right? And then all these kind of small initiatives are actually empowered from the bottom up. So as long as you create this culture and understanding that there's always room for improvement, then I think certain things you push down, certain things you allow to come up, and then you constantly improve. Oh, of course. If I personally currently use AI on various fronts, but my interactions with just a simple ChatGPT prompt is at least now
AI
2
will
hours a
ultimately
day,
be good
right?
for business?
It's whether searching a topic, asking for references, helping me sharpen an email that I'm going to send, and so on and so forth, right? To a certain extent, there was at one point, I actually used it as a coach and said that, look, there has been this email chain, which, sometimes it happens, right? You start with this email chain back and forth and etc. And I put it there, hey, look, this was my response. What do you think of it? And then it was really open and honest that I was right here, you were wrong here. If I were you, I would have replied and etc. It was fantastic. But what I'm saying is the key message is, if you use it right, it's an amazing efficiency gain for you. And I'm just talking about the basic GPT that is out there. And then you have all these various tools, whether, as we talked, it's a planning software that will eventually automate your demand, or it's just simple things that automate your response to your customers, and so on, right? I think we're just scratching the surface on this one. And for sure, it will help the businesses. One anecdote I just want to tell is, like, I have a stepsister. She's 22 years old. 3 years ago, when she was applying for university, she came to me. It's like, okay, you're working for Unilever, blah, blah, blah. Let me give me some advice. The three, let's say, programs that she were looking into, I had no clue what they were. Right? Because one of them was with AI something, the other one was that. So, I mean, those things did not even exist when I was applying for university. Yesterday night, I was in a back to school event in my kids' school. They said that the challenge for us as the school is we're trying to build a curriculum for these kids that will go to jobs that don't exist today. So it happened with my sister. It's going to happen with my kids. But AI will play a massive role in this one. And then how do you build kids, yourself, your organization, to make sure that they are ready for such a future? I think that's going to be the differentiator between the successful companies of the future. Well, I mean,
a lot to think about there.
That's very.
I would have my thoughts, but we're not here to speak about
if
that.
You want to boil it down to one piece of advice.
One question we ask all our guests.
What I would tell is,
you went back to yourself
every single
as
night
you were starting your
or
career,
the occasion I have a chance to speak with my kids.
Now, what would be
I tell them
one piece of advice
the key to life is to be happy, right? Because in essence, if you're happy, that means that you're a fulfilling life. And why it might sound very cheesy, I think it's way more deeper than it sounds. And that's what I'm always trying to teach them. If you are happy, that means that whether in job or in life or the sports that you play or the friendships that you have, it doesn't matter. You're getting something fulfilling out of it, right? If I look at back my career, I've been always happy. It doesn't change the fact that there has been challenging times. I was frustrated, but overall, the major thing is like I was always getting the fulfillment out of it. I was happy. I was engaged. I was happy with the job. I was happy with the context. I was happy with the friends. I was happy with the colleagues. I was happy with my bosses, and etc. So for me, I think that is super crucial. And don't make anything that makes you unhappy.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from Dwyer Partners SL, doing business as the FMCG guys, or the individual author, host, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Dwyer Partners SL. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Dwyer Partners SL expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we presented in this podcast.